Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. Being a podcast or radio show host involves honing your skills as an interviewer. There are things successful hosts do differently than the average ones. I discuss some of those things along with pitfalls to avoid in this episode with my guest, Gary Scott Thomas. Gary is a 30-year morning radio show veteran, podcast host, and creator of Look Forward, a philosophy about how the happiest and most successful people always have something they're looking forward to, and how that simple idea can transform your team, your business, and your life. We dive into topics including where a great interview starts and how to successfully start one, the difference between open-ended questions and specific targeted questions, and what you can expect from each of them in your interviews, the importance of being genuinely curious about and interested in your guests, the one thing above all else that you need to do to successfully embrace the art and science of interviewing, and other golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Gary, thank you for making time to do the Idea Climbing Podcast. I appreciate you.
Dude, thank you for having me on. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited about all this stuff because I just think what you're doing is fascinating, interesting, and you know as well as I do, you love stories as much as I do. I love the stories that are inside all of us.
That's where we're going to talk about the art and science of interviewing. But before we get into tips, tactics, strategies, all that good stuff, when it comes to interviewing, dude, you've been doing it forever. Why do you do it? What is your story there?
I am so fascinated. Everybody has a story and they don't realize it, right? They don't realize it because it's your story. You lived it. And rarely do we see the specialness that we are. And all of us have a special thing about us, a special moment that if you just take the time to be a part, because we all get so busy, right? And I have always just found the stories of what people do and take for granted, you know, and I've learned to pull it out. I'll give you a classic example. My father fought in World War II, and World War II ruined him. I'll tell you that. But he casually mentioned one day that he was riding a motorcycle in Italy when someone shot it and it blew up on him. And he goes, it blew all the hair off my chest and everything. And I was a young kid and I thought it was an interesting story. But as an adult, I can sit back and go, Gary, why didn't you ask for more? Right? Because even now, I've just told you that. And you're automatically thinking, what happened? Was he hurt? Was it a soldier? Well, and you know, the whole thing goes from that, right? And I kind of learned from that. My father passed away many years ago. And I never had a chance to follow up on that question. Right. And so I've tried to learn from that. Don't just stop there, because our lives just don't stop there. Everything is a continuation, right? And so I try to bring that into it. Whatever's going on with you today, whatever's happening I find it fascinating. I can't tell you how many just mind-blowing stories I've heard just because I took that. And not only interviewing, just in day-to-day life, just because I took the time to go, so, and then what?
To go deeper.
Yeah, to let people, this is going to sound like I'm trying to say it, but just let people invest in themselves, right? And that's what you're doing when you're really sharing a story, when you're sharing your story with someone else, because, you know, I don't think any of us want to be seen as that ego jerk who just talks about themselves all the time. And there's a distinction on that. But all of us have gone through something awesome, hard, easy, that is just a fascinating story.
So with that in mind, ultimately you want to, what you just said, I love it, go deeper. So many people ask surface level question after surface level questions like, oh, I just got excited. Now we're off to a new subject. But to get an interview started in the right way, where does a great interview start? What does that look like to you?
The greeting. I tell you what, when somebody steps into my studio, and you know, now we do it remotely, but even before, when I would be in a studio and especially doing radio, and you'd have people walk in, right, and come in, and you know, big name stars and stuff, I always have tried to make them feel that I'm excited that they're there. And that changes the tone. I can't tell you how many people would say, especially in radio. Radio, you had a lot of people who were trying to be too cool for the room. So, if name a big star, if Tom Cruise walks in or Tom Hanks walks in, they're like, hey, Tom, Now, I'm not saying gushing, but I'm going to be like, I am so glad you're here. What's going on, man? How are you today? And that changes everything from the moment you meet someone, how you interact with them from that moment. If you feel like they are excited to talk to you, if you feel like they are, again, using that word, invested in the conversation you're about to have, you are now ready to be transactional, if you will, because you will return that. I remember one of my favorite comedians is Kathleen Madigan. I don't know. She's hilarious. She's just hilarious. And she walked in my studio one day and I'm like, Kathleen Madigan, you, not only are you my favorite, you are the best. And if I could build a Mount Rushmore, I would build it, but you're so short, it would only be this tall. Right. And she starts laughing and she's like, well, aren't you sweet? And it changed everything. And I was talking to the guy who had brought her here, part of the people who are taking them from radio to radio station. And they told me afterwards, they said, you're the first person who made her feel really welcomed. And we had to pull her out of the studio because she didn't want to leave. Right. And I always remembered that thing that it's like, I was so excited to meet her and that made her excited. So when you have a guest, it all starts at the beginning. There's no wasted space. There's no wasted seconds. It all starts from the moment you engage, even if it's through email. I try to let people know, and you know this, I've emailed you. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait.
So after the introduction, you get excited. They're happy to be there. You're happy to be there. How do you carry that energy over into that first question in the interview and not make it like, oh, I'm so happy to see you. Boom. Like a mental break of, oh, and here's question one. What do you do to carry the energy from the introduction and introducing yourselves into that first question, into the interview itself?
I will tell you the truth, and I tell everybody this because, you deal with publicists and stuff, and they want to know, hey, what are you going to ask? What's some of the things? Yeah. And I'm like, I will do a lot of research. When you walk into my studio, I will know a lot about you, but I have no questions because we're going to have a conversation. If you went to a dinner party, you wouldn't go with a list of questions. Now, that's not besmirching anybody's style of doing it. The famous interviewer David Frost would come up with his line of questions and we were going to go down these questions and it was fascinating, right? But for me, what I do is I'm going to have a conversation and we're going to go and when something comes up that I find relevant that I know from my research, then I can go, hey, how about, and then leave it open-ended. And I'll give you an example. Recently, I was talking to a guy. He was a reporter for network television, and he was, but he also studied astrophysics, math, everything at Cornell. And I had known that he had taken a class with Carl Sagan, and in fact, he had kind of gotten Carl Sagan ticked off at him. When he mentioned Cornell, he goes, yeah, I was that. And I'm like, wow. I said, wasn't Carl Sagan at Cornell at that time? And he goes, oh, yeah. And I said, did he affect the way you say the word billions? And he starts laughing and he goes, yeah. And then he starts telling the story. I left it open for him. That's where the research came in, right? See where the research came in? And that's where the research came in that led him to let him tell the story because I didn't want to tell the story for him. But I bring it in and it just starts like you would at a dinner party. How are you? What are you doing? If I'm talking to Keith Urban, hey man, Keith Urban, the country singer. Hey man, what's up? What's up with you? How's life? How are the girls? Because he's got daughters. And, we're not going to get too personal because he does, but he's okay with you going, how's the girls? Oh, everybody's good. Everybody's at. Have they gotten used to that 400-hour flight to Australia? Because, that's where he's from.
Yeah.
Now we're in a conversation. Oh, yeah. Well, they always want to do first class and stuff. And, they love it there. They go all the time. Now we're starting going into a conversation. Now we can, highlight what you're doing. Are you still having fun doing it? Did you ever think you'd still be doing this 30 years ago when you first came out? So it is taking, for me, the way I do it is looking for those conversations. And I look for guest oriented rabbit holes. If they lead something down, I don't ever want to take them down my rabbit hole. I don't. I want to take them down their rabbit hole. And sometimes you'll say stuff and they don't even realize they've said it. And you have to go, wait. Can we back up for a minute? You just said you were, again, another thing, this guy whose grandfather was he was the Secretary General for the United Nations during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about him. I said, when you went to New York and stuff like that, when you would go visit him and stuff, I said, did you realize you're working with world leaders and stuff? And he goes, no, I was having dessert one day, and I know Nikita Khrushchev was, or something like that. One of the things, and it was like that. And I'm like, so wait, you're having dessert? That's what you remember? And he goes, yeah, it was 10. He goes, I just remember these people were talking and I'm just trying to have dessert. I was trying to see if they were going to finish. I wondered if this world leader was going to finish his dessert or could I ask for it? What a cool rabbit hole. What a cool rabbit hole, right? Right. But that was a rabbit hole. But he mentioned it. He didn't realize it said it. And so my job is to listen just like you do. You're a very good listener, which lets it finds, I love your interview style. You and I have talked about this before. It allows you to find what they say. And then when you see that rabbit hole, I'm going to jump down there with you.
How far do you go? If there is a distance, how far do you go down a rabbit hole? How do you know when to change subjects? Unpack that a little bit.
Well, for me, again, when you have gotten the story, that's when I finish up. When you have gotten the story. Again, I'll bring up Keith Urban one time, and I was interviewing him, and I was saying his opening act was said Keith is just like the calmest guy. He's just the calmest guy. He lowers the temperature of the room when he goes in, and he goes, well, I don't know if that's always been the case. And when he said that, he could have been high, and I'm like, possibly so. I said, but you're a hothead. And he goes, yeah. I threw a temper tantrum or two. I said, what got you out of it? He goes, I was opening for the comedian Billy Connolly. And he goes, I had like 4 guitars and I left one of them at the hotel and the show was going to start in 15 minutes and the hotel was 45 minutes away. And I started throwing a fit. And he said, Billy Connolly walked over to me and he goes, you can get as mad as you want, but the guitar's not going to magically show up. So do with what you have.
Yeah.
That's the story. You didn't have to go any farther than that. He's okay. And now we can move on to the next thing because he's shared with you the story.
I'm really interested now that you mentioned rabbit holes. How do you avoid the bad ones? Because I know every once in a while, someone, not intentionally, but they start to go down like a negative path or a negative story. And you're like, oh, crap. You can kind of feel the energy sucked out of the room. You're like, oh, man, I don't want to go there. How do you dodge, avoid, or get out of the bad rabbit holes to not kill the energy of an interview?
I try to acknowledge whatever they're doing negative, right? And say, yeah, that sucks. But on the other hand, right. And you can do that in conversations and stuff. And sometimes when you are doing an interview, sometimes it's therapy. I've been in that situation where it almost turns into a therapy thing, where I sit back and said, I know that's tough, but look how far you've come. Look where you are now. Look how many blessings you've got now. And usually when most guests if they're cogent enough to be on with you, it's because you felt like they have something to share. Most of them will hear that and go, oh yeah. But and if I have to say it, hey, I don't want you to go down on this. I don't want you to get, too thing on that because you have so much more to share. And you can phrase it to where they hear the positivity that you're trying to bring. And again, I think a lot of it comes from the way you present yourself. And again, I I just get I'm happy. I enjoy it. But you look at some of the big people who are interviewing our thing. I mean, you look at the Joe Rogans and the Chris Williams and stuff like that. For the most part, they're just a very Joe Rogan's always looking for a way to make you laugh,
Mhm.
right? And it's a very underrated skill set. I remember having Joe Rogan on my show, on my radio show during the Fear Factor years. And and even then he was a great he would when they would come to the local San Jose Improv, they would have them come in and stuff like that at our call. And even then, I found when I talked to Joe Rogan, I found an interview and I was listening to it, and it was amazing how quickly he turned to interviewing me. It was
Mhm.
amazing. It was really cool, right? And it was fun, but it was taking that energy because we were talking about the weirdos on Fear Factor and what they would used to do to be on TV. And he was laughing about it. And he goes, yeah, you find some strange people who'll do anything if they're in front of a camera, right? And so he was able to take the negativity of those people are and then find the funny and joy in it. And he goes, and I'm just stupid enough to let him do it. Right.
I love that you're mentioning rabbit holes. I want to take it a step further. How unpack the best way to say it is unpack it a little bit more. How do you find those rabbit holes? Because I'm guessing you don't just hope they're going to come up in an interview. Maybe you do, but you mentioned it's like coffee talk or being at a cocktail party.
Mhm.
Are there ways that you can discover and uncover rabbit holes that people want to go down?
I have found a lot of my rabbit holes is that when I'm willing to share something about me, right? Well,
Hmm.
because that's what a conversation is, right? I mean, if it's just you and talking and then I'm just doing nothing. It's like right now, I was having this conversation and you're saying these rabbit holes. And it's the same thing. When I sit back and go, yeah, I got teenagers and I'm getting the eye rolls. Well, if they have kids, there's a chance they're going to go, oh, yeah, well, let me tell you about the time so and so, or something that shares with them on that, and asking them questions that are as open ended. I do open ended questions. I love it that you are different. You zero in and ask specific things, which I find fascinating. And it allows people like me to expunge. Uh, but, but I try to go open ended, right? If I'm talking to a comedian and stuff like that, or an actor, it's like with Jeremy Piven, I was talking to him and I said, how much waiting is there in what you do? And you just see him go,
What?
oh, there's so much waiting. He goes, that's the hard part. That's why they give you trailers, right? Because you may film for 8 minutes, or 2 or 3 minutes worth of dialogue, and then they have to change everything, and then you have to go sit in a trailer. And then you find out they rewrote the scene, so now they need to redo it and put three. How cool is that as a wormhole? The rabbit hole. And then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
started going down and unpacking, as you said, the realities of his life. I think that's one of the things about long form podcasts and stuff that we do. And you see this on TV and stuff a lot too. We are all so interested in the nuts and bolts. We're fascinated by it. I mean, that TV show, how it's made. You want to see how we make a lawn chair? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing as someone who worked on radio, and you have this, I have a YouTube channel. I'm always shocked by how many people want to sit and watch Mark and Gary talk because they want to see the nuts and bolts and how it works and how it happens and stuff like that. And to me, I find it just interesting. So hopefully that kind of I answered a little bit where
You
you
did.
look for those little conversational things that then allows them to expound upon their experience, because that's again, and if you find something, if somebody goes, oh yeah, then he mentions like a UFO, oh yeah, it's like those things, those Pentagon things. That allows
Yeah.
me to go, so do you think they're real? How do you think? Do you think we're out there? You think anybody's out there? And then they get to allow me to go down that rabbit hole with them. And if they ask me, what do you think? I'm like, I think the distance is too great. Distance, you know. uh, But then now we're having this kind of cool, weird conversation.
Do you let them bring up the nuts and bolts, or is that a part of the tactics you use to get, do you get them to intentionally share nuts and bolts, or you just hope it happens? What does that look like?
I'm looking for the nuts and bolts. I'm not going to
Okay.
force it, but I'm looking for it. I'm looking for, I have songwriters on, and I'm always fascinated by songwriters. I have New York Times authors, I am fascinated by that creative process. And it is tremendously hard to explain for everyone because it's so different for every single person. And for you to ask them, so how does it work for you? Trying to get the nuts and bolts. And it's always fascinating that they'll be like, yeah, I can think some guys will be like, well, I walk into a writing session with 4 ideas in mind, right? Or I've got a song half quit, or I come in with nothing, or we go down this and, or something happened and I wrote it down. And then, and we go from there and I try to flesh it out or see if that's it. And he goes, then I bring it because, nobody writes by themselves anymore when it comes to songwriting. And I remember
Okay.
talking to a songwriter, very, very famous songwriter. Nicole Gallion has written a zillion songs. And I said, do you ever write by yourself anymore? Because that's the way they used to do it all the way up until like 1990. The songwriter would just write by himself. Like Don Schlitz just passed away. Don Schlitz wrote The Gambler. He wrote Forever and Ever Amen. He wrote Deeper Than All. He wrote, as Kenny Rogers had the best quote about Don Schlitz ever. He doesn't write songs, he writes careers,
Ooh.
right? What a great line, right? But he wrote all those songs by himself. They don't do that anymore. And I was asking Nicole, I'm like, why do you write by yourself ever? She goes, oh, no, which led me to go, why? And she goes, because I need someone in the room to tell me if it sucks. She goes, I'm afraid if I'm by myself, I'll talk myself into it that it's good. And it's not. I'm like, that's cool right there. That, and again, that's a nuts and bolt rabbit hole.
Well, once you start going down these rabbit holes, what do you do to start winding down the conversation? Because imagine, and I know I've been in that situation before where it's just like, it's so exciting, I want to keep going, but if you have a certain amount of time to fill, 20, 40, 60 minutes, whatever it might be. How do you start to wind down without killing the energy of the interview?
Well, I always ask my guests, how much time do you have? I'm not going to go over an hour if I can, because I don't listen. I love Rogan. I've never heard one of his whole podcast in my entire life. I ain't got 3 hours drive around and listen to some. I don't, right? But I realize there's UPS drivers and something like that. So I always tell them if you have, and sometimes they get very specific. I have 45 minutes. Well, if I'm at 39 and you're telling a story, I'm going to go, hey, I know you've got places to be. So I want to go to the next topic because I want to use all of your time. I want to use it, stuff like that. And I've never heard anybody go, what? Or I'll look up and blame it on myself. I'll sit back and go, oh my gosh, we're at 58 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's gone so fast. And I promised you I wouldn't keep you over an hour, and I want to stay true to that. But I just want, and if I'm in a place that I need to change the topic, I'm like, man, my time's almost up, and I really wanted to hit this. I really wanted to ask you what you thought about economic policies in Greenland, whatever, wherever we're going, right? And allow them to do that, and especially today when there's so many interview or opportunities to talk. I think people are willing to follow the host wherever they take them, right? And they understand, oh, well, we're trying to get this, and especially if they had something they wanted to promote, right? That they've got, oh, and your movie's coming out or your book's out, and when's the next one coming up, and then they get to do their service oriented. This is what I want to try to promote, because usually they're trying to promote something. And I want to make sure that I honor that I really give them, this is what we're doing. The links are on my page. All we can find them here, all of that stuff.
Well, before we get into what you're going to promote, we covered a lot of ground, short period of time. Awesome stuff. Great content. People listening or watching are like, they're following along. I get it, how to start it, how to rabbit holes, keep it going, dodge the bad rabbit holes. If you were to say, when it comes to the art and science of interviewing, if you're going to do it right and you want to be a good interviewer, at least do this one thing. At least just do this one thing when it comes to interviewing. What would you tell people to do?
Know who you're talking to and why. And if it's a complete stranger to you, right? Because there's sometimes that you do an interview. I did one interview where I didn't really do that much research because I wanted her story to affect me. She had a horrible situation where her family was caught in a mudslide and her son and husband were killed and her daughter was missing for 3 days before they found her. Right. And she wrote a book about it and stuff like that. And I purposely did not read it because I wanted the experience for myself. I didn't want to bring it in. I wanted the audience to hear the experience that was coming for all of us. And so I know who I was talking to and why. And that allows you to approach it the way it needs to be approached. Right. If it's the same with you. I mean, when you were talking to Bo Jackson, it was different than when you were talking to someone who's trying to teach you how to use your voice better or, how to approach. So you know who you're talking to and why. And sometimes that why is your thing. Why am I talking to them? Why am I doing this? Why am I making this happen? What am I looking forward to? What am I trying to achieve with this? I just want, one of my goals is always, I want everybody who's ever been a guest with me to go, that was fun. That was cool. And if I were to ask you back, you'd go, yeah, absolutely. That's what I hope is that they, I'm not a gotcha thing. I just want it to be fun. I want us to enjoy it. There's so much negative stuff you can do in the world. I have no interest in, and that's not a criticism of the people who are going to go, that's what they do. I try not to be that spot. I try to be that spot where it's, I don't try to paint everything as wonderful, fine, and great. But this is my experience. There's joy in everything at some point in your day, there's joy. Now, how much joy? That's kind of look up to you. Man, this soup is good. Well, this chair's comfy. Hey, you know what? My knee doesn't hurt today. It's not all about parades. It's finding the joy where you can. Joy is rarely going to come up and slap you. Joy is going to be standing off in the distance, and you got to go, oh, there it is. Oh, hey, how are you doing? And so I try to help people see the joy when I can, that guest and mainly the audience. And for the audience, I'm just trying to have fun with my guest. When I listen to a fun podcast, it's because I'm enjoying hearing the people talk. I enjoy hearing them. Same thing with what we learned in radio, that Julie and I, my partner on the air, what people like is just hearing the conversation between us. Because they know us and it's like hearing old friends talk about this, that, and that, and just getting our reaction to it, how we think about it, how we approach it. That's what I try to do, is let people be a part of that conversation. And then they can go from there.
This has been awesome. If people want to learn more, find you online, where's the best place or places to go?
GaryScottThomas.com. That's where you'll find all my stuff, all the podcast. You can find a podcast anywhere you get it, Apple, Spotify, it's all out there. Also write a column at GaryScottThomas.substack.com, right? And those are the places you'll find me. YouTube channel, all the regular places. And my background is country music. And so that's why if you're watching the YouTube thing, that's why I've got the guitars in the background. I don't know how to play them. I don't know how to play guitar. I don't. But they look cool. So, so yeah, you can find me there. I try to do like probably 60% country music or entertainment oriented stuff. And then the other stuff is just fascinating Olympic gold medal swimmers and actors and comedians and physicists and because I just find it interesting. I do my best to embrace curiosity. I really do.
This has been awesome. Thank you again, Gary. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mark. Loved it.
And scene.